Hi guys, it's Jody. Today's video is going to be the last video in my Sherwin HGTV Infinity Saga. Detailed anyways. I will be using the pouring medium in future videos going forward along with the other bases you've seen me use. But today's video I'm actually going to be mixing up the two pouring mediums you saw me using in the last few videos. The Infinity Jo Sonja and then the Behr Infinity Jo Sonja. I was asked if I would do a mixing video, so this is that video. And just for reference, this is the base I'm talking about. The Sherwin Infinity Semi-Gloss Base C. And this one is sold exclusively at Lowe's. You can't get this at the Sherwin stores. It's only at Lowe's. Now, my goal with this channel, part of my goal, I mean, it's to have fun and paint, right? And you've seen me use a number of different pouring mediums, and you know, I know that some newer folks to the blooms technique might be confused. Well, which one should I use? I don't know which one to use. They all work. My goal here is to show you, and I'm going to continue with all the stores around me that have bases, to show you what works, so that you have a pick, a variety. You know, maybe you only have one store near you, or you know, it's a budget constraint. These are all factors I'm taking in. This is why I test. I love testing. I want to see what works and what works well, so I want to bring that to you. And as we go along on my channel, you'll see more. You know, I'll bring in more. I have a few more up my sleeve. But I also want to say, if you don't have any of these stores, or you can't get any of these, you might be, I don't know, on a remote island somewhere, and you have to bring stuff in. What you want for a pouring medium, I just want to kind of clarify a little. What you want for a pouring medium is you want an untinted base, house paint. You know, you go to your local hardware store, any base that they're going to use to tint a really dark or a black paint is the base you want. And just let me clarify a little bit more. For example, this says base C. Some sets you'll have, you know, A, B, C, or you'll have A, B, C, D. You want the last one. You either want the C or the D, whatever range. Or they do it in 1, 2, 3. You want the third one for your untinted base. And I've also seen it, Menards has, I think they go by white pastel, mid-tone, and then neutral. In that case, you would want a neutral base paint. And then for your varnish, if you're not able to get any of the ones that you've seen me using or you've heard others using, you just want something that is a water-based polyurethane gloss varnish. One more thing to mention on the untinted base paint that you would be looking for when you get it, whether it's, you know, base C, base D, neutral base, base 3, whatever, you want it to be either semi-gloss or higher. Semi-gloss meaning, okay, they have a pick from semi-gloss to gloss to high gloss. Get the high gloss. Or if they only have up to semi-gloss, get the semi-gloss. You want a glossier finish for your base paints. That's it. That would be your pouring medium. And I mean, you would have to test it, but those are the components you need for the pouring medium for the blooms technique, if you aren't able to have access to any of the ones that I'm showing you on this channel. It was a bit long-winded, but I thought about it. I'm like, you know, there might be some people that can't get anything I'm showing. So I wanted you to just be aware of what to look for at your store when you're going to look for these kind of components. Now, having said all of that, we're going to go get started mixing up the two pouring mediums I mentioned we're going to do. And then I think if the video's not too long, we'll see, I might make just a future video for mixing paints. But I try to put that into all my pouring medium mix videos, is to mix a few paints with that particular medium. So I'm going to try and do that as well, just so you can see how I mix everything up together. So let's go get started. All right, so I'm going to be mixing up two of the two pouring mediums that you saw me use in the last couple of videos in these little these are little cheese containers. They're nice when you just want a smaller amount. And I'm going to be measuring them out with tablespoons. Now you can measure them out with teaspoons, with tablespoons, with fluid ounces here, with cups, or with liters or milliliters. They will all work with the parts that I'm gonna tell you how I mix these. What you really don't want to do is by weight, only because these components, they weigh differently. Their densities are different, so the parts might be off. You really want to go by, 3 tablespoons to 1 tablespoon, as opposed to 100 grams to 25 grams, because this base is going to weigh a lot more than this base. So just keep that in mind as you're measuring out your own pouring medium bases. With that said, the first one I'm going to mix up is the Infinity and the Sonja. And I get these quarts at the dollar store. I like to, if I have a gallon or above size, I don't like to go in that gallon a lot, because every time you open that lid, it brings in air, which creates bubbles. So I like to divide it up into smaller containers, or just use this and then, keep refilling it. So just keep that in mind. If you see things are getting a little bubbly in your gallon, it's probably because, every time you open up the can, and then also when it's sitting in there, the more space that's in there, there's air, it's air circulating. So you're going to get a little bit of bubbles in there. So I'm going to be mixing with the Sonja. There are alternative varnishes that you can use, and I've tested most of them. The polyacrylic is especially good. Now, earlier in my first video, on the detailed video in the Infinity, I think it was my hour-long video, I was having an issue with the quart that I bought. Not only was it thicker than the gallon I got, but it was producing some weird starry effect, and I've put that in timeout. But because it was thicker, and I'm hearing other people, they've gotten thicker bases like that one, or thinner like the one that I currently have with the gallon. I've mixed it up with both the Sonja and the polyacrylic, and I thought it would be a great idea. If you get a thicker can, that's okay. If you have a thinner varnish like the polyacrylic, or even the Behr, this isn't the triple thick, this is just the regular. Just use a thinner polyurethane, or if you only have Sonja, then just add a little bit more to try to thin it out that much more. It's just something to keep in mind. But alternatives, if you don't even have Sonja, this works amazing with it, the Minwax 1 coat. And I haven't tested the Behr triple thick, but I've heard others who have tested it and have been successful, and I've tested this with other bases, and it acts just like the Minwax 1 coat I just showed you. So those are other options, but again, if you don't have access to any of those, just look for a polyurethane, a water-based polyurethane that is gloss finish. Having said that, we are going to mix these up 3 to 1. So we're going to do 3 parts of the Infinity, 1 part of the Sonja, and I am going to be using tablespoons. All right, got my little cup here, and I'm just gonna measure that out. I'll probably either double it or triple it, however I see it's filling up in this container here. But that's 1, 2, 3. Actually, I think I'll double it. 4, 5, 6. All right, that's good. And you can even triple it if you wanted to. This will hold another round, but I've got so much of this mixed up right now. I'm just gonna go with this. So I've got 6 parts. So instead of 3, I've got 6. So that means I'm gonna need 2 parts of the Jo Sonja. So we'll do 1, 2. All right, mix that together. Mix that up really good. And I usually like to let my, once I mix the pouring medium portion, I'll usually let that sit a few hours. I mean, an hour at least, just to let all the bubbles escape. I mean, when you mix your paints and all that, you're gonna get bubbles again, but I don't know. You can certainly go ahead and mix it right away if you want to, if you don't have a lot of time. But if you do have time, I usually like to, there's something about letting it sit overnight. It just kind of, everything incorporates a little bit better, so just keep that in mind. That's a nice consistency. That's gonna be perfect. And I've found this, if you see, it's running off the stick really nice. Camera getting that, or is it too? There you go. I've found this works really well with all 3 types of paints: pigments, fluid, and tube paints. I mean, it just makes the nicest consistency. All right, I think that's mixed up really good. And I'll probably this will probably be a long video, just fair warning. Because I think what I'll probably do then is I'll mix up a tube paint, a fluid, and then a pigment with each of these 2 pouring mediums that I'm mixing up, just so you can see how well they mix up. And then if we need to adjust the consistency for them to be as similar as possible, we'll do that as well. So that is the first one. This is the Infinity Jo Sonja at a ratio of 3 parts of the Infinity to 1 part of the Jo Sonja. I just doubled it, so it was 6:2. All right, now we're gonna mix up the Behr Infinity Jo Sonja. And again, you can use, if you don't have the Jo Sonja, you can use all the other varnishes that I mentioned earlier. Or if you don't have access to those and need to use something else, you just want to look for a water-based polyurethane gloss varnish. And again, if you get a thicker can of the Infinity, and then also you're going to be putting in the Behr, which is, I mean, it's super thick, you might want to use the polyacrylic or just add more varnish. You might need to adjust the ratios than to what I'm going to be measuring out here. I have tested the polyacrylic as well as the Minwax One Coat, and they all work amazing, but I'm having an issue with the polyacrylic. I don't know if there's some ingredient in there right now. The polyacrylic and the Minwax, right now in my studio, it is colder. It's colder than normal, and it's super dry. There's really nothing I can do about it. So I'm using the Jo Sonja exclusively, but I don't want that to deter you from using it. Or if you see that weird drying effect I showed in the first video, the first detailed Infinity video, I don't want that to deter you. It could just be your environment. I'm going to do further testing on it on a test panel, and I'm going to cover it with a box. Maybe, maybe it's just that, but to be continued with that one. But if you have one of the others, go ahead and use them. They work just as well as the Joe Sonja. And again, you can use the teaspoons, the tablespoons, the fluid ounces, the cups, the milliliters, the liters, all again. I'm going to do the ratios I'm doing for the Behr Infinity. I'm going to be 2 parts of the Behr, 1 part of the Infinity, and then 1 part of the Joe Sonja. So that means I'm going to do at least 2 tablespoons. I might double it. 2 tablespoons of the Behr, 1 tablespoon of the Infinity, and 1 tablespoon of the Joe Sonja. Actually, I am going to double it because I'm going to be using the same little cheese container, and I do have some of this mixed up, so I don't need a lot, but I am going to double it just so you can see. And if you remember this consistency, it's even thicker than, it's the thickest I've pouring the thickest paint base that I have used. And if you just gotta finagle with it. It's probably thicker now too because of the environment I'm in. It does tend to get a little bit thinner when the summer months come along, so keep that in mind. So that was 2 that I just put in there as I'm rambling on. I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. I would have just kept going. That was 2, right? Yes. There's 2 of that. I'm going to do 4. So I'm going to double it. So 3 and then 4. And this is the Behr. All right. And then let me get that out of the way. And then I'm going to do 2 of the Infinity because I did 4. We're doubling it. Normally you would do 2, 1, 1. We're doing 4, 2, 2. So this is the, oops, this is the Infinity. Do 1. And then 2. And then we'll do 2 of the Joe Sonja. 1, 2. Mix that all up. Mix that in really good. And again, I mean, you can use it right away. It will be bubbly, but then I would definitely let your paints rest a little bit if you don't have as much time, but I usually like to let it sit overnight. And it does mix up thicker. If you want it a bit thinner, maybe add some more, just add a bit more Joe Sonja, maybe 1.5 instead of 1. This is what I've come up with, and this was my initial coming up with because I had originally mixed up the Behr Glidden as 2, 1, 1, and this seems to work pretty well. It might be on the thicker side for some tube paints, but you just might need to adjust it. Let's see how that's running off. That's pretty nice. It's just a touch thicker than the other one. Let's compare those two. Where did I, oh, there it is. This is the 3 parts Infinity, 1 part of the Joe Sonja without the Behr. And that is, let's see if I can do this left-handed. That's the consistency there. And then this is the Behr Infinity Joe Sonja, the 2 parts, the 1 part, and the 1 part. But actually we doubled it, just not to confuse you. Normally I would tell you the ratio is just 3-to-1 or 2-1-1, and then you can double it, triple it, multiply it however you need to. So this is a lot, it is actually a bit more runnier than this one, but this one still runs nicely off the stick as well. If you can catch that, yeah. right. So those are the two infinity options. All right, now we're gonna get to mixing up some paints with these. All right, now we're going to mix up, I'm gonna do a tube paint, a fluid, and a pigment for these two pouring mediums. And I'm gonna do the same color so you can see how they mix up, if they mix up differently. I haven't really compared them myself, so it's gonna be a test too. All right. So the first one we're going to do is the Infinity Just Sonia, the 3-to-1 that we mixed up, the non-Behr one. And I always use these 3-ounce containers. And I usually don't fill them all the way up. I'll usually mix about 2 ounces in there. And again, I know for anybody that's new, I don't measure, which is why I'm kind of showing you. It's really hard to measure pouring medium to paints because all the paints are so different. You're going to be mixing in more pouring medium to a tube paint, but even in tube paints they vary. You can have a softer, even in this Jo Sonia, I've found some come out super stiff and others come out like almost really soft, and it's the same paint brand, the same tube, the same type of tube, it's just a different color. Their density is different. So keep that in mind. And then with the fluids and the pigments as well. So that's why I just wanted to show you an example of each. So we're gonna pour about an ounce. Oops. An ounce of the pouring medium into the cup. And then I'm gonna put a squirt. Let's see, probably about, that's about 1.25 inches squirt, I'd say. This is the Phthalo Blue Jo Sonia. And we're gonna give that a mix and see how it mixes up. And you can always adjust if you need to add, if your color still feels a little bit light, you can add a little bit more to get the richness you want. Or if it's feeling a bit too thick, you can add a little bit more pouring medium, or you can add just a little bit of varnish straight in there to thin it out as well. But that seems really good. I might add just a touch more. So now I've probably put in total a 2-inch long squirt out of the tube. Get that mixed in there. I'm going to add a little bit more of the pouring medium. I've probably got about 2 ounces of pouring medium in there now, maybe an ounce and a half. But you just kind of, however much you need to mix up. I usually only mix up between 1 ounce and 2 ounces at most of each color, depending on the size of the painting and how much I want left over. But you're going to adjust accordingly. Each paint is going to be different. But that color looks good to me. And that consistency looks really good. It's nice and just streaming off the stick, really nice. So we're gonna let that be. And now we're gonna move on to, this is Golden Iridescent Gold Deep Fine. If I showed you the Jo Sonia bottle for the last one. All right, so again, I'm gonna add about 1 ounce, give or take, to my cup. And then with the, especially with golden, I have to guesstimate. I mean, really, that was about 3 squirts of the gold. And I do want to add a little bit more of the pouring medium in. And you'll just adjust as you go. And this is actually a little bit more runny. Still, actually, it's a good consistency still. I might go with it. If it's too runny, you feel, oh, this just is too thin, you can add, I've got a couple of gel glosses. I've got a heavy gel, I've got a regular gel. However, I have found recently that some paints just don't like to mix this in with it. It'll stay, there'll be like a chunk or two in there no matter how much you mix it in. But you can add a little bit more of just the straight up pouring medium without the varnish to see if that'll thicken up a little bit more. But typically I would reach for the gel gloss. Some of the metallics that, and I don't even remember offhand, I did see it kind of made it was a copper. That doesn't help you. I realize that, but so just keep that in mind as you're mixing. If you use it to thicken and it just seems off and it's not mixing in, maybe just add in some of the untinted base itself just to try to thicken it up a little bit more. Or if you have something else that you know that works, if you have like the string gel, or maybe throw in just a little bit of the Behr, because that stuff is thick. All right, I want to add just a little bit more of the pouring medium in here. And when you do add a bit more, if you're making a bunch, if it looks like the color is a little bit pale, or this is an iridescent, if it just looks a little bit paler to you, then you can add in another squirt. Nothing wrong with adjusting. It's never ever going to be exact. Any recipe or any part, for the most part, is a guideline when it comes to mixing your paints. That looks pretty good. All right, we will compare all of these at the end to see which is thinner and which is thicker, and if we need to make adjustments. Sometimes I like to just go ahead and make a bloom with it and see if it holds up. If it doesn't and I need to thicken, okay, I'll adjust accordingly. Or you can even do a sample. I freezer paper. I have some right here. Just show you, when I say freezer paper, I literally mean freezer paper. You can get this at Walmart, Target, any store, online. Just take a square of it. You don't have to put any pillow down. Just put your colors, put your cell activator, blow it out. See how the cell structure is, if it's doing anything weird. That's a good way to test things also. Okay, moving on. Oh, wait, actually, we're not doing a paint, we're doing a pigment. Pay attention, Jody. All right, we're gonna be doing this. I just got this and I don't know how it mixes up. It's supposed to be a red, but in the container it looks gold. This is called Hot Cinnamon. This is the Color Art Primary Elements. Oops, still got the seal on it. And I might add, when you're mixing up pigments, you might want to wear a dust mask. I usually do, but because I am doing a demo here, you won't be able to hear me, so I'm just gonna be careful not to breathe. You don't want to breathe these particles in at all. So I'm gonna take a little bit of the pigment, probably about quarter to a half a teaspoon. Just throw that in there, close that up, and then I'm just going to add maybe a teaspoon of the pouring medium. You don't want it to, if as you're mixing it up, you don't want it to be pasty and chunky. If that happens, just add a little bit more of the pouring medium. You want to dissolve all the powder in here. Wow. That went from gold to blood red. Did you see that? That is amazing. I love how that happens. Especially with new pigments that I haven't gotten yet, or haven't even seen, or haven't seen anybody else mix it up. And with a lot of the color art, what it looks like in the container is different when you mix it up, and so it's a fun surprise. Just get that mixed up well, and all the little chunks in there dissolved. That looks good. Wow, that looks really, really gorgeous. All right, now I'm going to add a little bit more, probably about, another tablespoon. And as I do that, if it becomes too light, the color becomes too light, and you want it a bit more richer, you can always add in a little bit more pigment. It's you know, you adjust as you go. That's just how it works. Wow, that is gorgeous. But that's runny. Yeah, that is a little bit runny, isn't it? That's running off the stick really nice. So I'm inclined to leave it. But again, if you like your paints a bit thicker, then add either the gel gloss, or if you have the string gel, or some more of the Infinity, or throw in a little blurb of the Behr. Just something to thicken that up if you want it thicker. All right, now let's compare the three. All right, so here is our tube paint. They all run off the stick really nice, but you can, just by moving it around with your stick, you can feel the what do I want to call it, the consistency. It's got a bit more body to it. And then the gold, yeah, that has some pretty good body to it, just a slightly less than the tube. And then the pigment, it's got just a touch less, but still there is body to it. And they may thicken up as you let them sit. Some of my paints don't, and then some of my paints do, especially if I have a smaller amount mixed up. So it just depends. So before you go and do your blooms, you always want to stir your paints again, just to reincorporate them. Do it slowly, but also to check for the consistency, if it's you know, to your liking, if you want it thicker or thinner. So I would just go with that. Let's test that theory. Now that I'm thinking about it. And I have you here with me. I don't think I'm certainly not going to adjust that, and I don't think I need to adjust that. We might, but this is the Infinity base by itself without the varnish in it. I'm just going to add a little, because it is thicker. I'm just going to add a little. Whoop. Come on, slippery little sucker. I'm just going to add a little dollop in there and mix that up. Yeah. Yeah, that definitely thickened that up. Oh, look at that. Well, there you go. If the gel gloss doesn't work out, you can definitely add in just your untinted base to thicken it up a little as well. This guy, yeah, we'll just add a little dollop in there too. Yeah, that did thicken it up. And you can almost feel it as you're thick. Yeah, that's definitely just, it's a touch, a hair thicker. If you want it even thicker, just add a little bit more. But go slowly, because if you start to see that your paints are getting pale, then you're gonna want to add just a little bit more of your paint in there. It's a balancing act, it's a pain, but that's kind of how it works. All right, that is the Infinity Joe Sonia. Now we're going to mix up the Behr. I keep wanting to say Behr Glidden. I'm so used to saying that. The Behr Infinity Joe Sonia. So I'll be right back. All right, now here we go with the Behr Infinity Joe Sonia. Mix up the same 3 colors. And what I just said about adding in a bit of the untinted base itself, right as you mix it, you might want to wait until you're actually going to use the paints, or a little bit before, just to see if they've thickened up on their own. I just wanted to, I couldn't remember if I pointed that out, but just keep that in mind. All right, so here is the Behr Infinity Joe Sonia base. Put it out of the way. And the first one we're going to do again is the phthalo blue. Let's get this balanced. And I'm going to add about an ounce or so. But I'm going to add a little less, probably about an inch squirt. That's maybe an inch and a quarter. Okay, never mind. Of the paint, and then mix it in real good. And that's definitely thicker, but we're going to add some more of the pouring medium first. Probably add a bit more to make it about 2 ounces. Yeah, that's a nice, there's a bit thicker consistency with the Behr in it, especially with tube paints, but it still runs off the stick really nice, if you could see that. But I might add just a touch of the Joe Sonia in there just to thin it up just a little bit. So this time we might go the opposite direction. We'll see. All right. Now the next one is going to be with this thicker pouring medium, it's probably going to be perfect for your thinner paints, like your fluid and your pigment. So again, we're going to add about an ounce. Maybe a little less, yeah, we'll add it, since it's fluid, I'll add just a little bit more. Actually, that's probably about an ounce anyways. And probably 1, 2, 3 squirts worth of that, and then mix. And especially when you're mixing in iridescents and pigments, you might see like a white cast or a white hue. That's just the ingredients incorporating in. It won't dry that way. And as the ingredients incorporate into one another, it won't it won't have that hue, and if it still does, it's okay. It's probably either the varnish or the one of the ingredients in the pouring medium. Again, it won't affect how your paint works and dries, or the color of it. That's a nice consistency. So it's running off pretty nice. I may even actually thin that a little bit. Actually, I'm going to add a little bit more pouring medium first, just to see where that goes. I've probably added another ounce to make about 2 ounces of this paint color. And if ever you see it looks a little bit pale to you, you can always add in just another little tiny. You don't need a lot, especially with higher pigmented paints like golden. That looks pretty darn good. All right, let that sit, and we'll do the pigments. And again, you're doing this at home, wear your dust mask. I'm gonna be holding my breath as well as I can. About a half a teaspoon, quarter to a half a teaspoon, more like a half a teaspoon. And then about a teaspoon of pouring medium mix. And again, if it's like pasty and chunky, you immediately add more pouring medium in there to break that up, because you haven't added enough. So I might add just a touch more. Okay, there we go. Wow, that red is something else, isn't it? I think I want to compare how this looks to just the Infinity Joe Sonia. Compare this, because we have the Behr in this pouring medium. All right, that looks like I think I've got all the chunks in there. Gosh, this is really pretty. All right, I'm going to add about another tablespoon or so of the. And you can always add more if your color looks a bit faded. Just throw in some more pigment, adjusting as you go. Yeah, see, this is a nice thickness with the Behr. If you want, using the Behr, if you want things a little bit thinner, I would suggest adding in a bit more of the Joe Sonia gloss varnish, just to thin it to whatever you need it to be. But that looks like a fantastic consistency to me on its own. With the Infinity Joe Sonia, we may have to thicken certain paints up, and with the Behr Infinity Joe Sonia, you may have to thin them. Actually, this might need to be thinned just a touch. And I will do that now. Usually I would wait then. I would let these sit to see if they thicken up anymore. But I'm going to do it now just to show you. Gosh, look at that red. Whee! Okay, let's just compare the consistencies first. All right, this is the tube paint, and it's running off, but it's a little thick. I kind of want to thin that up just a touch. Yeah, this is a little bit thicker too. unless you like your paints thicker. I mean, this, I've used them straight up from mixing them with the Behr Infinity in my tests, and they've turned out just beautiful. But I might thin these just a touch. What did I do with my Sonja? Okay, we're gonna pretend that these have been sitting a while and they need to be thinned. This is what I would do. I would add just a touch, a few drops at a time of the Sonja and mix it in. I don't normally like to use water. But if you do use water, I mean just drops of water, and make sure, I wouldn't use tap water. It's been known to yellow things, unless you know for a fact that your water doesn't have a lot of the weird minerals, or you're on well water. I would stick with bottled or distilled water if you're going to add any drops of water. Just add just a hair more. I think we'll be good with this one. Yeah, that's nice. That's a really nice consistency. Okay, the gold here, I think I'm just going to add a hair. Or if you want to, what's even thinner, instead of using the Sonja, if you have a few different varnishes, try adding a little bit of the polyacrylic, only because it's thinner. It's water based, and to me it's runny like water, so that might be another option for thinning. But if the Sonja is all you have, go for it. That's really nice. Okay, cool. And this little guy here, it seems a little gloopy. Just add a hair in there. Okay, a hair more. Just a hair more. Boy, I can't wait to try this color in something. This is gorgeous. That's better. Yeah, that's running off a lot nicer. Okay, now I just want to do one more thing, and that is to compare the difference between the Infinity and the Behr Infinity on clarity. You saw me with my test colors that I absolutely love using, but in actually mixing up and seeing them in the containers, actually this can use a little bit more. That's a shade lighter. That could use a little bit more paint. All right, just get the bubbles incorporated so you can see. So this row here is what we just mixed up. This is the Behr Infinity, and I'm definitely seeing the Behr doing its magic in there because it's so clear. And then we have the Infinity, this row here, which is still absolutely gorgeous. But you can especially tell, well, this is just a color issue, and this is the Behr. I think I just needed to add a little bit more paint because I did add more into this one. So that's just being a shade off. I'm not really worried about that. It's more your iridescent and your pigments, depending on, maybe you want to use Infinity for your tube paints, and then the Behr Infinity for your iridescence, your fluids, your pigments. The sky is the limit, but if you can see, if the camera's picking that up, I think I can see. Yeah, I'll bring you down too. and just go over it really quick. And I'll probably move it over out of the glare of the light, especially for this red, because I notice a difference. But this gold is just a little bit blingier. There's my word again. Than this gold, and then this red is just a little bit blingier than this red. So let me bring you down and show you that really quick. All right, I've just brought it over out of the light. So again, this top row is the Behr Infinity, and then this bottom row is the Infinity. And there really isn't a difference that I can see with the blue. That's just a tube paint. And the Behr in this one, it's just a little bit clearer. It's nice and iridescent here too, and they both dry. It's a hair off, I think. I know I say hair a lot, but then this one is the, let's see if I can get that. It's kind of hard to see the clarity. There's the Behr Infinity, and then the Infinity. Definitely blingy, but again, the Behr brings the super bling. Well, that was a lot of mixing, but that was also fun. So you see the differences between the Behr. I mean, that Behr just sets things apart. No matter what you put it in, it's just like, what? And using it on alone is just, I think it brings it to another dimension, really. But the Infinity by itself is just gorgeous, and it's probably one of the most vibrant, apart from the Behr, the most vibrant bases that I've used, that I can get to work correctly. I have not been able to get the Behr to work correctly on its own with just varnish. It does weird wiggly squiggly things for me, and it's beautiful, but I haven't been able to corral it yet. So that's why I like mixing it with other base paints to kind of cut it a little bit and keep it from getting all squirrely. So I know this was a lot of information. I'm not sure how long this video is going to be, but I hope it helped you in seeing how well the Infinity and then the Infinity Behr work. So with that, thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.